Lenny.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to episode 104 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
We like to dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch.
All right, Lenny, our book this month is The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. Whoa, this is a dense book with lots going on.
I didn't know how dense it was. It did take me a while to read it. I looked up just to get a refresher on the names.
Yeah.
And this particular list lists like 86 names in the book. I knew there were a lot. Now I have the list to help me to remember, because some of the people go by one name and some of the people have nicknames. So you got to know who's who in this story. Yes.
A lot of characters.
Characters full of a lot of color and personality.
And their names are too.
Oh, yes. They're fantastic names.
Yeah, they are. Well, this book was published in 2023, so fairly recently. And I'll tell you, I remember when it came out, it just seemed to be everywhere. Everyone was reading this book. And so I'm glad that we got to it this year. It was a New York Times bestseller, a reader's pick for 100 best books of the 21st century. It was winner of the 2024 Library of Congress Prize for American Fiction. It was named a Best Book of the Year by NPR Fresh Air, The Washington Post, The New Yorker, and Time Magazine. And it was one of Barack Obama's favorite books of 2023.
That's some really good accolades. I never heard about the book nor the author. I'm thinking, this is a book about a grocery store? That's interesting. Okay. But it had a winner early on because the book is set in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Just maybe an hour and a half from where I live. And it starts when it talks about the Agnes flood, of which I was around for, and so were you. We were little girls.
Absolutely.
And we were hit with the flood like everybody else. And that flood has yet to stay today as the worst flood of 100 years or something in this area.
Yep. Just
devastated the area. And we have a murder. Some people digging up some old well. There's a body. And we have to figure out who this is. So welcome to Pottstown and the Chicken Hill and the people that lived in Chicken Hill back in the day, in the dilapidated neighborhood where immigrant Jews, African Americans live side by side, where the sewer doesn't run.
Right.
And the water can be kind of iffy.
Exactly. Dana Smith, in a review for the New York Times, calls this book a murder mystery locked inside a great American novel. Now, having read this book, do you agree that the book is a murder mystery inside a novel?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason why is because I started reading this book and it is dense. I don't know how many pages. I got it on my Kindle.
Ding, ding, ding. Kindle mention.
Yeah, of which I get no royalties. I started reading this book and then someone called me, Nancy, and said, stop reading that book. You're not supposed to be reading that book. Our next book is supposed to be this book. And maybe that was a book or two ago. So I had to put that book on the shelf, get out another book or two, because remember, we got all out of sync.
We
with
did.
These publishers calling and all sorts of things that messed up our flow. So I forgot completely about the flood and that there was a guy that died. We were supposed to figure out who was at the bottom of the well. So no, I didn't see it as a murder mystery. I just saw it as the people in Chicken Hill.
Yeah. The book starts in 72. Agnes Flood washes away a skeleton that's just been found. But then we immediately go back to the 1920s in Chicken Hill.
Yes.
And like you, I kind of remembered that there was a body and I knew eventually we'd find out, but it did not feel like a murder mystery to me. It felt almost like a collection of stories about a neighborhood and the
Yes.
characters.
Okay, so that gives me a good question for you, because now that I know that there's a protagonist and all these things about
Yeah.
these stories,
Yeah,
I'm looking for my protagonist. Going,
exactly.
who's this book about? Okay, it must be about the shopkeeper because that's the title of the book.
Right.
And his wife. No, they're main-ish characters, but we got lots of people in the story.
Yeah.
And a lot of different people kind of step front, and they become a major story, and their history and who they are and how they fit into this tiny little community, kind of their role in it and what they're known for. And they take over the story.
Mhm.
So I wanted to know from you if you thought there was a protagonist.
Okay, I will say, I think it was about halfway through the story, we finally meet Dodo, who is the young boy who has been deafened by an oven exploding in his home. And when he comes on stage and the story starts revolving around him, then I realized that he and Chona, who runs the Heaven and Earth grocery store, for me, they were the two main characters in the book.
Okay.
It's almost like water circling around a drain. This very wide survey of all the people in the neighborhood. And as you keep reading and reading, you're circling ever narrower, ever narrower, ever narrower. And again, about halfway through the book, suddenly something shifts. Now we are picking up steam and we've got the current and we are circling
Okay.
into then the end of the book.
Because I will say, when Dodo hits the book, I did draw more interest and focus and enjoyed the book more. I don't know if it was just too many characters at the beginning, if I didn't really know where the story was going to go because I didn't know what this book was about.
Right.
So that's interesting. And then who would you say, or what would you say would be the antagonist?
I think it was Doc Roberts, probably.
Okay.
Because he represented prejudice and bigotry. So it was him as a character and his actions, but also I feel like he represented a part of society at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that set some very bad things in motion for both Chona and Dodo.
Yeah, and the Son of Man too, I thought.
And the Son of Man, yeah.
And then I also thought maybe racism and prejudice could be an antagonist, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a character, right? It can be a theme or not.
Usually an antagonist is something that is keeping your protagonist from achieving what they want to achieve. So it can even be a good character who is keeping your character from achieving what they want to achieve. It doesn't have to be a malevolent character.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess bigotry of the town, that was keeping people in Chicken Hill from living the full lives that they could have otherwise lived. Yeah.
And Dodo in a place that he didn't deserve to be.
Right.
Dodo didn't deserve to be where he was.
Right.
The only reason he was there was because of racism.
Right. And Doc lying about him.
Yeah. Oh, well, people believe Doc. All righty. So I needed to get that out of the way. So thank you for that.
But that is interesting to me that you did not agree with the reviewer from the New York Times calling this a murder mystery. Since I had the advantage of reading it straight through without being interrupted with every book, it was more in my mind that at the beginning, okay, there is a skeleton found, a mezuzah nearby wearing some sort of a costume. Who is this person? And as I was reading, I was thinking, well, who is that ends up at the bottom of the well? And I actually did not guess who that was going to be until pretty close to when it happened in the story.
Well, I think the right person ended up at the bottom of the well.
Yeah, I think so too. And how he or she, let's just say he ended up in the bottom of the well, that worked out pretty well too, I thought.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, the book opens with Hurricane Agnes. Did you also catch that the book ends with us learning that one of the main characters dies in the South on the day that the hurricane hit Pennsylvania.
No. What?
Dodo.
Dodo died?
Dodo dies on June 22nd, 1972. He is in the South, and this is actually really beautiful what James McBride writes. He was not Dodo of Pottstown, but rather Nate Love II, the father of 3 boys and 2 girls. Nate was not the very last love after all. There would be more. They surrounded him as he died, his children and their children. He died on June 22nd, 1972, the same day Hurricane Agnes wiped much of Pottstown off the face of the earth. And a day after, an old Jew named Malachi the magician vanished forever from the hills of southeastern Pennsylvania. Talk about full circle. What do you think the symbolism of Dodo dying on the same day that the hurricane hits Pottstown is?
Well, I don't know. I was just so happy that he lived a good life. I mean, that was the part that was like, oh, he got married and he lived a happy life and he got children and Nate rescued him. And I was so glad that Nate got his wife down there to the South.
Yes.
And they weren't arrested and they lived a beautiful life there.
And Nate and Addie couldn't have kids, but then Dodo
was their boy.
And his kids became their kids.
Yes.
And he took on Nate's name. I mean, there's just so much that's beautiful about that.
I get tears in my eyes just thinking about it. So I was focused on that part, not really the flood. And like I said, I forgot the first part of the
Good point. Yeah.
The book about the flood. Well, what do you think the symbolism meant?
I feel like, in a way, the hurricane is a cleansing force in this story. It washes away the evidence of this skeleton that may bring back old divisions and hates. It may bring injustice to people who live in the community, but instead the hurricane comes and it's almost like the hand of God. It punishes people in the low-lying area of Pottstown, downtown, where all the white Christians lived. And people in Chicken Hill were actually pretty fine. Thank you very much. And then with that catharsis, Dodo is able, surrounded by love and children, is able to meet his dear friend Monkey Pants in heaven.
Oh, I know. Oh, I do remember that part. Oh,
yes.
Oh, Monkey Pants. I loved Monkey Pants.
Monkey Pants.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, Lenny, you are crying.
Yeah, I forgot. Oh, my golly. See, then I picked up this book, and it's been a while since I've read it, and I forgot that they meet up in heaven, and oh, my golly, this is such a good story. Yeah.
Maybe I should read that little final bit, too, because that is so good.
This was such a dear friend for him when he was in the ward.
Yeah.
This boy kind of kept him alive in a lot of ways. He gave him hope and friendship.
Yeah. Okay, so the final main paragraph, and this is about Dodo. As he faded to eternal slumber, surrounded by loved ones, just feet from the sunflowers and summer moss that had helped wipe away the tumult of his first 12 years of life, he would offer 4 words in his final murmurings that were forever a puzzle to all that knew and loved him and surrounded him in his final moments of life, save for one who was not there, who was far beyond them all, now living in the land where the lame walked and the blind could see, who awaited him even at that moment as he drifted upward, eager to hear the news of the many adventures that had befallen him since they'd parted ways. It was to him that he spoke, not to them. He called out, "Thank you, Monkey Pants." Yeah. And can't you just imagine those 2 boys reuniting and being able to continue their friendship? Linda's nodding and crying.
I don't think I cried when I read the book. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, Nance. Yeah.
So back to Hurricane Agnes.
Well, that's an easier topic to talk about. My goodness. Monkey Pants, what a little love bug he was.
He was a love bug. Okay. So we were living in Hummelstown at the time.
Well, yeah.
I do remember it. I looked up some data about Agnes because my memory of it was catastrophic. Turns out my memory is correct.
Yes.
Its damage was the heaviest in Pennsylvania history and the costliest to hit the U.S. at the time. In Harrisburg, the Susquehanna River crested at over 33 feet, and flood stage is only 17 feet. So it was almost double flood stage. 680 billion gallons of water flowed through Harrisburg compared to a normal day when the river carries only 23 billion gallons. Throughout PA, Agnes resulted in the destruction of 71,000 structures, 2 billion in damage, and 48 deaths. So what do you remember about Agnes as a little girl?
Our basement got flooded.
Sure did.
And by flooded, I mean we were little girls, but it had to be up 4 or 5 feet in the basement.
Yeah, it was almost to the roof of our basement is what I remember.
It was pretty high.
Yeah.
So we had to boil the water.
Yep.
We could flush the toilet like once a day or something. You had to go out in the alley. I don't know if you had to do this because you were a year and a half younger. You'd have to go out in the alley in the gutter, get the rainwater with a pan that mom would provide, go upstairs, dump the water in the back of the tank so that you could flush the water in the toilet.
I don't remember that.
You didn't have that job.
Maybe I didn't. Yeah.
I guess that was Steve and mine.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just wanted to flush the toilet after I used it. I don't know. But that's what I remember.
Huh.
And I remember thinking that Dad was going to get electrocuted because people were getting electrocuted in their basements because the water would go up past the outlets. And Dad was down there trying to rescue things from the basement. And I was very upset. I wanted him to get out from the basement. And I remember splashing in puddles and the smell. I remember the smell.
Oh, really? Was it like a sewage smell? I don't remember the smell at all.
Musty, moldy.
Oh, okay.
Everybody had their couches out and their clothes out and boxes out on the front yard because everybody's houses were flooded.
Yep.
And it was just that dank smell. And our town was on like a curfew. So you had to pass the police to get to your house if you went outside of town.
Oh, I forgot.
You had to show proof of residency so that you could get back in with your bottled water or juice, whatever you could find at the grocery store to drink. Do you remember that?
You know, I had forgotten driving back into Hummelstown. I think we must have been in Hershey or Harrisburg. And I do remember there were police stationed there. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that. Do you remember that little creek going and seeing it? And it was just higher than we could imagine. And we were lucky where we lived in our town. We only got our basement flooded because there were people in our town who got their whole houses washed away.
Right. I mean, we didn't live near a creek at all.
Yeah, we were on higher enough ground.
Yeah, and far enough away.
Yeah.
But the water was so saturated in the ground.
And then I think it was also coming up through the sewer system.
I think so too.
So even if you were on high ground, though, the sewage system was so backed up. The stormwater system was so backed up. Everything was getting inundated with water.
Yeah. What else do you remember, Nance?
One really sad thing I remembered is that our brother had those green army men toys, and he thought it would be fun to put them on little boats and float them around the basement water. Everything was well and good until then the water went down and the little army men were lost forever. And that made him very sad. And that made me very sad as well.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. I remember him being very upset about that. In my memory, who knows whether he was or not. I believe I remember that he was upset about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, we were out of school. It was June, so we weren't affected as far as school goes. But a lot of schools ended up having a tremendous amount of damage. And I can't remember what school it would have been that they had to replace their gym floor. And Dad got a lot of that gym flooring. And I forget what he ever even used it for. But you remember Dad coming home with a lot of that. It was an old gym, but very narrow gym flooring. But like you said, I do remember just the piles of just debris everywhere in everyone's front lawns, businesses. Everything was being thrown away because it had been flooded. Cars, There were huge trees that were floating down the river and knocking bridges out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know, obviously, what happened in Pottstown.
Yeah.
But thousands of people in Pottstown also lost their homes and bridges were washed away. It's just not that far.
Yeah.
And that's just the opening of the story. And it takes place back in the 20s and 30s, like you said, where we find a body.
Right. So, spoiler alert, we are going to talk about the entire plot. If you don't want to know what happens, turn us off and come back after you've read the book. Okay, now we can talk about everything we want to talk about. In terms of themes of the book, I was struck by how many characters had disabilities. I felt like that was one of the main themes of the book. And then I watched an interview with James McBride, and he said he feels this is a book about children with disabilities.
Who knew?
Yeah. And when he started writing this book, he thought he was going to write a book about a camp he worked at when he was in college. It was a Pennsylvania summer camp for children with disabilities. It was started by a Romanian Jewish theater owner. That's what he was trying to write. And he said he wrote chapters and chapters, but he just felt like he wasn't getting to a story. And then he realized that the story was, why did this Romanian Jewish theater owner start a summer camp for kids with disabilities? And that's how we got to Heaven and Earth grocery store and the story that he eventually ended up writing.
Okay, well, that's very interesting.
Were you struck by the characters with disabilities?
No.
It did not.
It didn't even occur to me. I mean, polio was a big thing back then. Lots of people got it.
You're not kidding.
And so growing up, then we knew older people who had polio. And it's like, oh, well, you can kind of pick that polio person out because everybody had the same kind of disability. It's like, oh, yeah, they must have polio. And I sure remember my polio shot back in second grade, I think it was.
Ooh.
So that didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me that in the ward that Monkey Pants has a disability.
Yeah.
Because people with disabilities ended up in asylums.
Yeah. Even though it was simply a physical disability, it was not a mental disability.
Nope. It didn't even occur to me that there were an extraordinary amount of people with disabilities. Had it occurred to you?
Yeah. A lot of times after I finish a book, I start writing what some of the interesting themes are, or the plot points, or characters. And one of the first things I wrote was disabilities. But I think what you're saying is really interesting, that maybe now we just don't have as many people with disabilities as there would have been in the 1920s and 30s, because we did not have the polio vaccine. People got injured and we didn't have medicine that could bring back their sight or their hearing. There was probably just a greater percentage of the population that had more visible disabilities than what we see now.
Yeah, hopefully medical's gotten better, because you think, why in the world can't this boy hear? Something exploded. Why can't they get his hearing underway?
Right.
They got his sight back. You would think that would be the part that would be damaged. I think we're maybe more accepting of disabilities, and we don't even really, oh, so they have polio. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's not even something we would even talk about. I don't think I ever talked about it.
Would you remember my 5th grade teacher had polio? Mr. Randecker?
Well, now that you say it, maybe, but he was never my teacher.
That's true. But he definitely walked with a limp. I think some of his limbs were turned in a little bit, or he didn't have use of them in some way. Now, one of the things about the characters with disabilities, and I think that James McBride does this with a lot of different themes, is that he shows us different ways that characters deal with it. So we have Chona, who runs the Heaven and Earth grocery store, who is really a lovely character. She's had polio, but he says, quoting the book, she has not an ounce of bitterness or a shred of shame about it. Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey, that's just what I have. That's who I am, whatever. She also can't have children. So that's another thing that she's dealing with. And she does have some sort of chronic illness that is never really named. Next, we have Doc Roberts. He was also crippled from polio, but for him, it's a great shame. And he feels disfigured. He feels like other people don't accept him. His dealing with polio, very different. We already talked about Dodo. He's lost his hearing. Monkey Pants has cerebral palsy. There are a lot of musicians in this book because Shona's husband, Moshe, owns a dance hall. One of the musicians, Chick Webb, who's an actual musician, is said that he is a very talented musician despite being a hunchback. And then, of course, like you mentioned, all the inmates at Pennhurst who have a variety of disabilities, physical, intellectual, emotional. It's just like where everyone goes and gets warehoused back in the day.
Yeah. Now that you say that, that's interesting that the author started out writing a book about this and had an early experience with that.
And he just says that there was a transformational experience of his life. He loved being at that summer camp and he loved those kids.
Well, I think when I think of the book, I think a lot of racism and classism.
Yeah, for sure.
Where the people lived, who they rubbed shoulders with every day.
Yep.
And how they viewed one another. And it's not just your classic black, white. We got lots of different things going on.
Lots.
Just in the Jewish tradition, we have the Romanians, the Hungarians, and the Germans.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the Hasidic Jew, Malachi.
Yes. And some that are from this world and life in the world before where we came. And then Malachi goes back and forth between the worlds.
But they all distrust one another.
Yeah, prejudice. Let's talk about the African American community.
Yeah.
We've got the ones that live in town. They're different than the ones in Chicken Hill. And then the low gods that live down the road a ways. Yeah. They're different too. And so there's mistrust and information based on those groups of people.
Yep.
Then you've got the bigger groups like the Jews versus the blacks versus the whites.
Mm-hmm.
The whites that live on Chicken Hill versus the whites that live in town.
Right. And all the whites seem to think that they're descendants from the Mayflower, which is very important to them. And none of them are, but they seem to all think that they are.
I don't understand that. And then you've got the classism, which again, depending on where you live and your culture and your upbringing, you know, how rich are you?
Right.
The shop owner wants to move more towards the wealthier area in town. Chona, his wife, is like, these are my people. This is my house. This is where I'm staying. And I am embracing the people around me. These are my people. And she doesn't care anything about race, whatever. She likes her people and her community around her. So there's people that are driven to, oh, we don't want to go up the hill. And people are like, nah, I'm not going down there with white, wealthier people. I'm staying here. But everything is very clear. They would like to have a sewage system. They might not want to go downtown, but they would like a sewage, please. And pipes that run a sewer so they don't have to use an outhouse.
And it's funny, the town has steadfastly refused to extend the sewer system just because there are always other priorities. And yet they denigrate the people on Chicken Hill because, oh, those people who don't have a sewage system, they're using outhouses up there. Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. And of course, who are the people that are on the council is like Doc Martin and people like that who are happy to have the people using an outhouse on Chicken Hill because apparently there's water issues too. So,
and then there's just this general American distrust of any immigrant. So Doc Roberts gets really upset when these immigrants like Guy, he starts to really come up in the world. He buys a dairy and now he's made it onto city council and he's the president of city council and he's starting to run things. And Doc he's outraged because he's like, Guy is a dirty immigrant. He's putting on airs and I'm a Mayflower descendant. So who is this upstart coming along and trying to tell me how this town should be run? My family owns this town and has for decades. And you see that kind of thinking
even
now.
today.
Yeah.
I think the author should have put in a Cherokee somewhere and him just having a couple comments about all of this.
I'll tell you what, it would have been a Susquehannock, probably.
Yeah, you're right. A Susquehannock, local from this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Saying, who really is the immigrant? These people are really funny.
By the 1930s, we'd pretty much killed out the Susquehannocks.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, I thought there were also some beautiful portrayals of friendships that bridge these differences.
Yes, the friendships were huge.
McBride points out all of this prejudice and bigotry, but then we get people who are able to bridge those divides. And those are the people that we really come to love. And maybe not everyone in town loves these people because they really are transgressing the mores and the norms of the community. So they become very suspect. But clearly, these are the good, beautiful, beloved people in the town. So there's Chona, who we've already talked about. She just loves Chicken Hill. This is where she grew up. This is where she wants to die.
She knows all the people. She went to school with them.
Right. And she has a friendship with Bernice from when they were little girls. Then in high school, they had a falling out, but they just live across the alley from each other. But they have not talked for years. But then during the time of these events, they rekindle what once had been a very important friendship to them. And I just thought that was very beautifully handled. I loved that friendship.
I did too.
Bernice is Black and Chona is Jewish. Then we had Dodo, who's our little Black boy who lost his hearing, and Monkey Pants, a little white boy who has cerebral palsy. Their cribs were next to each other at Pennhurst. And they form a beautiful friendship, even though Dodo can't hear what Monkey Pants is saying. And Monkey Pants has a very hard time communicating orally. And so they figure out a system of blinking that works.
Yeah.
We mentioned Chona just loves everyone in her community. And at one point in the book, McBride says Moshe would find her at the end of the day chatting on her doorstep with all of her Black neighbors. And she didn't think anything of it. Now, he's a little more conscious of this. He does think something about it. But for Chona, no, these are just her neighbors.
Yeah.
We have Fatty, who's Black and is Bernice's brother, and Big Soap, who is an Italian. And they are very good friends. And they just help each other throughout.
They're hilarious.
They are funny.
Oh, my golly. If I had to teach these two in school. Oh, yeah.
And someone did because they went to school together.
Like, get Bernice down here. I need her help.
Seriously. And they get into all kinds of trouble together at work and in the neighborhood, but they're always there for each other. And they completely trust each other.
And they're nice. They're very loyal to each other, but they're nice people. You would want them to be in your community.
Yeah.
Fixing your car and doing all sorts of stuff.
And then there's Moshe. This is Shona's husband. And Malachi, this kind of mysterious character who floats in and out of the story, who is a Hasidic Jew and loves the old country and hates America.
Yeah.
But still, they form a friendship that ends up being important to Moshe, really.
Yeah.
So any of these or any others of these relationships that you found most compelling?
Well, I liked all of these relationships, but I kind of hung up on two people.
Okay.
One was Paper, because she knew everybody.
Oh, yes. Oh,
and she knew everybody's business.
Yeah.
So everybody knew Paper. Paper knew everybody's business. Paper probably would have been a friend to everybody, but you only let her so close because she's going to tell your news to everybody too.
Everybody's going to know whatever you tell Paper. Yep.
So there's Paper. I really liked her. And then I loved Miggy.
Yes.
Miggy was the one who set this plot in place to help.
You're right.
And Miggy was very respected. What she said went.
Yeah. And they were both unique women, probably for that neighborhood. Paper has not married by the time this is all happening. And she's probably in her, 20s or 30s. She's very beautiful.
Yes.
Everyone's in love with her, but she has not settled down to marriage, even though she's had lots of suitors. Miggy was married and her husband beat her. It was Paper who helped her through that.
Yes.
And Miggy is a seer of sorts for the low gods. She can tell futures.
So these were women who had a lot of power and respect, I guess.
Let's see, you said two. Is that the two?
Yeah, those are the two that stood out to me. They were friends with everybody. They were kind of a glue
Yes.
to a lot of people and held the community together somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought the connectivity that they offered to their community. When someone from the outside messes with one of us, we all bind together. So the guys from the train, way far away, that come visit, they don't have to say anything. It's like, this is what you're going to do on this night. Okay.
Right.
Because they understand each other. They have to work together. The white man isn't going to help them. They have their own level of organization and they're going to get together when they're needed. And I thought that was just a really neat bond that they had as a community.
You know, the other nuance I really liked about that was the status of, say, Paper or Miggy or even Nate, the status and the esteem that they were held in their community. To the white community, they were just all a bunch of Black people. They didn't see anything. Miggy works as a aide at Penhurst, the asylum.
Right.
No one gives her any respect. They don't understand the position that she holds in her community. She's just another maid. Even Moshe, Shona's husband, who runs the dance hall, I don't think he really understands Nate's role in the Black community either. And Nate has this mysterious past. A lot of people in the community are really afraid of him because of this past.
But nobody's talking about it, really. But we know there's a past.
Yeah, Moshe's completely blind to it. He's a good worker. And
he sweeps well. He takes care of stuff.
Yeah.
And he shows up. He's loyal.
That's the extent of Moshe's understanding of Nate.
Yeah, he doesn't really even know anything about his life, really.
No, and they've worked together for decades.
Yeah. Okay, so Nancy, you and I grew up in the North. I do remember visiting the South as a little girl at times, seeing stuff I did not see up North. James McBride contests this view that we sometimes had of the North growing up. Here's how he looks at this rosy view of the North. And this is important because Nate is from the South. He and a lot of African Americans that lived in the South did make it to the North above the Mason-Dixon line.
And at this time, these would have been formerly enslaved people.
Right.
Who were making their way from the South and trying to get to the North thinking, oh, the North is this land of opportunity. They fought against slavery. So there is not the kind of prejudice there that we're going to face.
And there's jobs and we're out of the fields, but we're in a factory because industry was really big. This area, Pennsylvania, we got factories and we're blue collar.
Yeah.
We needed workers. So anyway, here's what James McBride says when he talks about the rosy view of the North. The difference was that the white man in the South spoke his hatred in clear, clean, concise terms, whereas the white man in the new country, which is like the North, hid his hatred behind stories of wisdom and bravado, with false smiles and sincerity and stories of Jesus Christ and other nonsense that he tossed about like confetti in the Pottstown parade. That's the end of quote. What that also reminds me of, because we just had our 100th episode, is one of my favorite books was Trevor Noah's book. And Trevor Noah has the same thing.
I agree.
In South Africa, you know, people are racist, and that's the way it is. When you come to America, you're not really sure, is this person racist? They're smiling when they say this. They seem to like me, but yet.
Yeah.
So you're not quite sure where you stand.
Right.
It's like subversive.
I thought the same thing, that in some ways, just explicit racism is easier to navigate. You know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, one thing I did like in this story, again, I just think that James McBride is very crafty in the way that he communicates very difficult ideas. Nate and Dodo, when Dodo is broken out of Penhurst, they don't go back to Chicken Hill or some other community in the north. Where do they go? They go back to the south for safety.
Safe.
So much for this, blacks are safer in the north during this period. No, they are going back to the south for safety. And they have a beautiful, lovely, fulfilling life back in the south, away from that silent prejudice.
They're surrounded more with love and maybe distant family. Whereas Chicken Hill is just a little too close to white authority and the whites, and they're living out on a farm. It's more rural, and people are leaving them alone to live their life. Plus, Nate's got a little bit of a reputation, so people kind of leave him alone.
He sure does.
That's not a bad thing.
Chona was really this very loving character. She would be someone who really, of any of them, did not have that prejudice. She operates the Heaven and Earth grocery store at a loss. Moshi is very sad about.
But he loves his wife, so he lets her.
He totally is in love with his wife. Whatever makes her happy. Because she lets people run up tabs and she never collects on them. She is always giving away food to the kids. And when they try to pay her, she always has a reason why they can't pay her. She can't accept it. And then people forget about it. And then you did mention Moshi wanted to move downtown off the hill. And I think this conversation is great. This is their typical conversation. So Moshi says, Chona, let's move with our other successful Jewish friends. They're moving downtown. She says, Moshi, I like it here. I grew up in this house. The postman knows where I live. Exasperated, Moshi pointed out the kitchen window toward Pottstown below. Down the hill is America. But Chona was adamant. America is here. So
Which
good.
She is right.
So good.
America is this bunch of people all living together.
Yep.
And I love where I live because I get to be amongst all the people.
Yep. I just love her response. America is here.
Yeah. Everybody's vision is different. Moshi definitely wants to integrate into white society, and what his envision of America is sort of this, if you can make it in white America, you've made it.
Yeah.
Where he's losing all of the heritage, all of the culture, the customs, the traditions.
Which is funny because he is a first generation immigrant and Chona is an American Jew. She was born in Pottstown, and her family seems to have lived in the United States for some time.
Yeah. He has a great way of blending all these people in. Nancy, do you have a favorite character in the story?
Oh, that is such a good question. Well, of the 80 characters, is that what you're asking?
Of the 80 characters, which one is your favorite?
Oh, no.
If you can't give me one, give me top two.
Okay, I did love Chona because she was just such a bright, shining light. Everything about Chona is wonderful. I love her activism. She is writing letters to the newspaper, condemning the Ku Klux Klan marches and pointing out the people, saying, Doc Roberts is leading the parade.
She recognizes the limp that she also has.
Yes. Stirring things up.
Yeah. And refuses to let him be her doctor.
Right.
Thank you very much.
And she pays for it dearly.
She has principles.
And just an iron will, a clarity of right and wrong, of justice and injustice.
She will take Dodo under wing. She will give marbles to the kids.
Yeah.
She will do whatever she needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
She's standing firm on her ground. So she was a real shine for you.
Yeah.
I think mine was Nate.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. Nate is extremely loyal. He is loyal to his mom as a child. Mm-hmm. He's going to hang by mom. If mom's not happy, he's not happy. And you know what? He's going to do something about it.
Yep.
He is loyal to his wife.
Oh, he is.
He is loyal to Dodo.
Yep.
At first of all, I think, oh, he's so passive. He's not going to do anything. They took Dodo from you. Go get Dodo. This man risks life, limb, imprisonment.
His marriage.
His life. He doesn't know if he'll ever see his wife again. He risks everything to go rescue Dodo.
Mm-hmm.
How beautiful is that?
Talk about sacrificial love.
So I think it's got to be Nate for me.
Yeah, he was a great character. Okay, so my last question I've been dying to ask you is what you thought of Malachi. So we meet him, the very opening chapter. He's an old man. He's got one tooth left in his mouth. He's the last Jew on Chicken Hill. But then when the next chapter comes, we're in the 1920s, he arrives in Pottstown at Moshe's dance hall from another town, and he's very, very handsome, extremely handsome. Moshe says something about dancing. He's like, why would I dance? I am here to meet a wife. Well, the dance is so great. He ends up dancing all night with all the women, and he is the most amazing dancer anyone has ever seen. He leaves town immediately, and we just kind of forget about him. 12 years later, he reappears and befriends Moshe, saying, don't you remember me? I'm Malachi. And it takes Moshe a while to remember, oh, you're the greatest dancer I ever saw. He opens a bakery in Pottstown. He's trying to achieve financial stability, but his food is just really bad. So the bakery does not do well. He returns to Europe for a little while because he does not want to assimilate into American culture. He loves his old life in Europe and would love to stay there, except of the problem of the rise of the Nazi Party.
A little bit of a problem.
Malachi returns to America and comforts Moshe as Moshe closes up Heaven and Earth grocery store. It seems to me, along with Chona, Malachi highlights the failures and problems of American society. He is happy to talk about all of the ways America falls short of its promise. Chona is happy to talk about that as well. But the way he drifts in and out of the story, and the way he shows up in the first chapter as this old man who's the last Jew on Chicken Hill, he almost seems like a mythical character to me, almost like the spirit of traditional Judaism in the United States, like not wanting to assimilate, not wanting to let go of the old ways, seeing America for what it is, being very wise.
A wanderer. He's not real settled. I do like the mythical nature of him coming in and out. And I think about his last name as the last book of the Old Testament.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. And it's a book of prophecy too. It's just sort of that shift. Like there's something coming.
Yeah.
And there is an end to the old. And where do I fit in? And I don't really fit into the old world because there's a lot of rapid change coming there and a lot of hatred building up.
Yeah.
So I can't really live there. What will I do in America? Do I fit in here? What do I do? Like a lot of the immigrants that we got in, they had well-respected jobs in the old world.
Right.
Cobblers, artists, teachers, all these things. They come to America. They're living in the slums. They're trying to assimilate, trying to bring up their craft, and they're toting fruit carts around and working in our factories and keeping your custom, keeping your culture, keeping your language, keeping all those things intact. What can you keep with you? What do you need to let go? Trying to manage all of that. And so I wonder about his last name being the last book of the New Testament and if that was purposeful in the change. Time of great change for people.
And why does he stay in Chicken Hill? He is someone who I would think after he helps Moshe, he would be off again because he is a wanderer, but he stays there.
The book really doesn't talk about the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. We come back to the 70s. So we don't know what his life is like, except for that he ends up in America and that this then becomes where he fits in or not, or to what extent, I don't know. But he finds his people, I guess, in Chicken Hill.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the immigrants, they knew that they would have a long haul and it would be difficult.
Yeah.
but they knew that the generations behind them. Oh, this is ridiculous.
Oh.
You're not doing it so much for yourself. You're doing it for your kids and your grandkids. You're making the sacrifice so that their lives will be better. You know, you're going to have a hard time.
Right.
You're going to be unemployed. You're going to be scrambling. You're going to be working 18 hours a day. But you have the hope that your children and their children will have it better.
Yeah.
And they did, I think, for the most part.
I do think about those people who immigrate to a different country, not knowing the language, knowing all of the social capital, all of the education, everything that they have built up in their lifetimes will be worth nothing in this new country, but they come anyway because that is the best hope for their children.
Yeah.
Makes you realize how lucky some of us are that we're born in a country, we're raised in a country, we get all of the benefits.
Yeah. Oy, oy, oy. I didn't realize I was going to cry so much on this episode. This was kind of a fun book for as much crying as I did. And happy ending, thank goodness.
But so complex. There was just a
Very
lot
complex,
of moving parts in this book.
Yeah, very good though.
She is now wiping the tears from her eyes.
Oh my gosh. This has been an emotional roller coaster for me. This has been exhausting. Okay, Nancy. So next time on the front porch, we're going to welcome Erica Slazen to the front porch to talk about the Heaven and Earth grocery store. And Erica is an archivist at the Historical Society in Montgomery County, which is where Pottstown is located.
Yay.
And she has written on the historical Pottstown portrayed in the Heaven and Earth grocery store. So I had a hankering to go over and see if I could find Chicken Hill.
Oh.
But this will be the next thing. Maybe she can share some pictures of what it looks like now. But I'm really excited to talk to her about that area and the history and this book and how it all clicks together.
I am too. I think this is going to be very interesting. Hearing from a historian about this book.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm excited.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Our website is frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out twice a month on the first and third Wednesday of every month.
See you next time, Lenny.
See you, Nance.